Hey everyone, welcome back to all my listeners. This is episode 16 in season 14. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, 2025. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. All right, you guys. Well, yesterday was the big bad tax day. The tax man came knocking at your door, or hopefully you will be getting a refund in a few weeks to a month or two, whatever the new system is going to be for this year. Let's wait and see. But I know I got mine done over the weekend. I always do it right at the end. I cut it close. I'm always sweating. But this year I was busy traveling the weekend before, so I knew I was going to be cutting it really, really close. But it's done, so I'm definitely happy and had a big drink of wine to just literally relax. But yeah. I do them myself, so I'm always sweating. Even though I say I have tax advisors on speed dial, I don't use them. I just do them on my own and ask them questions if I need to in certain years. But anyway, you guys, I hope you guys are all done and you are relaxing and can enjoy the rest of April. Can just be a fun month. I know yesterday was pretty stressful. So anyways, you guys, for today's episode, what are we going to chat about? Well, there's still yet another awareness for the month of April that I wanted to spotlight for my Newsworthy, and that is Alcohol Awareness Month. And in my Trusty tip, I wanted to highlight something in telehealth that I still see missing in documentation, and that is patient consent. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and close out and round out today's episode with another remarkable quote on change by Winston Churchill. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So in today's Newsworthy, I wanted to focus on April's Alcohol Awareness Month. I know a couple weeks ago, I talked about Stress Awareness Month. The month before that, I talked about MS awareness. So I'm going to really continue to focus on these healthcare awareness months as the months go by. I think it's really important to raise awareness, eliminate stigma, if that happens to play a part in these health conditions or diseases that I talk about. All right, so there's a wonderful resource found at the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, and that is at the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. Now, for the month of April 2025, they've dedicated their webpage spotlighting this important awareness month. They say, quote, April is Alcohol Awareness Month, an opportunity to update your knowledge about alcohol use disorder, or AUD, and the adverse impact of alcohol misuse on health and society. Alcohol-related problems continue to take a heavy toll on individuals, families, and communities. Researchers estimate that each year there are more than 178,000 alcohol-related deaths, making alcohol a leading preventable cause of death in the United States. In addition, more than 200 disease and injury-related conditions are associated with alcohol misuse, end quote. Now, I perused this entire website of theirs. There are multiple pages that are filled with really terrific information. So let's go over some facts also published on the website regarding alcohol and the human body. Now, there are lots of numbers that I'm going to go over, but these are big facts. Of the 96,610 liver disease deaths among people ages 12 and older in fiscal year 2023, 44.5% involved alcohol. That's a big percentage, right? That's just shy of 50%. Now, among males, 58,846 liver disease deaths occurred, within 47% involving alcohol. Now, among females, there were 37,764 liver disease deaths that occurred, with 40.6% involving alcohol. Now, of the 56,975 cirrhosis deaths among people of all ages in fiscal year 2023, 50.3% were alcohol related. Now, Among males, 34,258 cirrhosis deaths occurred, with 56.8% involving alcohol. Among females, 22,717 cirrhosis deaths occurred, with 40.4% involving alcohol. The percentage of alcohol-associated cirrhosis deaths was highest at 80.3% among adults aged 25 to 34, followed by adults ages 35 to 44. The number of patients with alcohol-associated liver disease, or ALD, who were listed for liver transplant increased by 63% from the years 2007 to 2017. In 2016, ALD replaced hepatitis C virus infection as the leading cause of liver transplantation due to chronic liver disease. In patients with severe alcohol-associated hepatitis, the prognosis is poor. Mortality is 20 to 40% within 3 months of diagnosis, and up to 70% for the subset of diagnosed patients who don't respond to corticosteroids. Recent estimates for the United States indicate that 5.6% of cancer cases and 4% of cancer deaths are attributable to alcohol consumption. Research has shown that people who misuse alcohol have a greater risk of liver disease, heart disease, depression, stroke, and stomach bleeding, as well as cancers of the oral cavity, esophagus, larynx, pharynx, liver, colon, and rectum. These individuals may also have problems managing conditions such as diabetes, high blood pressure, pain, and sleep disorders. Misusing alcohol might also increase the likelihood of unsafe sexual behavior. Alcohol consumption is associated with increased risk of drowning and injuries from violence, falls, and motor vehicle crashes. Alcohol consumption is also associated with an increased risk of female breast cancer, oropharyngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, especially in individuals who inherit a deficiency in an enzyme involved in alcohol metabolism, and harmful medication interactions. Alcohol consumption has been linked to risk for fetal alcohol spectrum disorders in the offspring of women who consume alcohol during pregnancy. So, when is it time for treatment? Well, this webpage states that alcohol-related problems which result from drinking too much, too fast, or too often are among the most significant public health issues in the United States. Many people struggle with controlling their drinking at some point in their lives. Millions of adults in the United States have alcohol use disorder, AUD, and approximately 1 in 10 children live in a home with a parent who has AUD. Now, the webpage goes on to talk frankly about the stigma. It states, a note about stigma. People with AUD can feel isolated and rejected due to stigma. The negative attitudes and false beliefs about AUD that they have heard from others or have picked up from society at large. As a result, people with AUD might be too embarrassed to discuss it, think they should be strong enough to handle it alone, or be concerned that others might have a negative opinion. However, AUD is not a choice or a character flaw, and it is a common medical condition that can happen to anyone. Evidence-based AUD treatment is available, change is possible, and most people who have AUD recover or markedly improve. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. Now, I know that I've discussed telehealth on the podcast for years now. There was so much going on during the pandemic, all the changes happening in coding for CMS and commercial payers alike, that I kept my listeners in the know. Now, even now, I issue Trusty Tips for 2025, all the big changes that have been going on in telehealth. I'm even presenting this Saturday for a telehealth workshop where I will be focusing on documentation deficiencies. Of course, I'm still seeing so many tweaks that can be made every single day in the auditing work I perform. So let's talk about this deficiency that I continue to see, and that is consent. Let's talk about it. Now, in 2025, the payers are all about patient consent, for telehealth services. So what does that mean? I mean, documentation has to state loud and clear that the patient verbally consents to the audio evaluation and management service, for example. Or the medical record must house a written form laying out all of the informed consent criteria. Again, that's often found at the state level that the patient signs and dates. So that written consent should address things like the use of telehealth technology and its limitations, the patient's ability to opt out of telehealth at any time, the provider's ability to access and use the patient's medical information, any potential risks, such as communication difficulties or privacy concerns. Those are just a few examples of what the written consent should address. Now, that form should always be submitted with the entire patient record for a pre-payment or a post-payment review. Now, finally, just to circle back on those states are often much more strict in their expectations for telehealth services in 2025. Many states require in their statutes that audio-only services must say why the patient was only available for a phone call, meaning perhaps they have no laptop, no iPad, no computer, no iPhone, no option for a two-way audio-video telehealth service, or they simply do not consent to audio-video technology. So just because we're well past the COVID-19 pandemic and following the telehealth rules way back then, we still have to play within the boundaries of telehealth currently in 2025. And patient consent is a must. And finally, I focus season 14's spark on change. I want this 14th season spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires us with their insights and their wisdom on change. So in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Winston Churchill. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Well, I don't really know about that second part, right? But I do agree that every time we change, we improve. This quote reminds us to keep changing, to keep evolving. Otherwise, how can we improve? This is a great quote. That first part, I think, is a must, right? We have to make changes in ourselves if we want to see ourselves improve and grow. I'm happy Winston Churchill's spark burns brightly and still inspires so very many. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's episode, and I hope you have a lot to take away from this short and sweet episode, especially when it comes to your own telehealth services that you might be going in for in the next few weeks. Make sure that you're signing or verbally consenting to those services, because you don't want your insurance carrier to reject that claim, right? And send that payment back to you as a payment responsibility on your part. Whereas the provider, it should be a covered service, right? Especially since we got the boon that most of our telehealth services are going to be covered through September 2025. So let's do our part as well as patients and make sure that you read those written consent forms and sign them. Or if you're doing a audio only type of a service, make sure that you're verbally consenting when you talk to your provider. So just some great food for thought there. Anyways, you guys, thank you so much for listening on today's episode. And I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.